one thing, and I give my highest praise to the people that do stuff that I don't want to do, and he does a lot of that. He's completely redesigned
I've been
our
giving
website.
you away, so does that mean I start?
And so he does a lot of work on our website. I started the Android app of ours and then gave up when it made my head hurt. He picked up from that. He's also working on I2P Vote, which many of you saw at the crypto party last night. That's our anonymous messaging service. So he is giving 2 talks today. The first one about half hour on Android development, and then a short overview of Hornet, which is a new anonymous network that came out of nowhere last month. And he's read the paper and is going to explain it to us for those of us that are too lazy to read the paper. So he can't hear me, but take it away, Strad.
Alrighty, thank you very much, ZZ, for the very kind introduction that I didn't hear a word of. Yay, technical fun. So, I am Strad. I am giving the talk that I'm about. I can find the thing. No, I do not want to send contacts. That's all what I want to do. Fantastic, that is working. So, today is the Agony and the Ecstasy of I2P on Android. Suffice to say, there has been a bit of both involved in this process, and I need that go away to go away. Go away. There we go. Okay, so technical issues over. The talk today is about the Agony and Ecstasy of I2P on Android. So, thought we'd start the talk with a little bit of a look at the past. You know, what's actually been done with I2P on Android before? Where have we come from? Then I will look over the Agony, the fun side of things. Moving through to the Ecstasy, the actual fun side of things, and then a brief look into the future and what I would like to see happening. So, I did a bit of digging for this talk, you know, looking back into the past things, and was quite amused to discover that the I2P Android app actually was created about a month after Android 1.1, which was the second major release of Android. So you were very forward-thinking there. So API 2 was the version of Android that I2P Android was first created a beta for. I have absolutely no idea how on earth you got anything to run on Android 2.2. Congratulations. Around about, so that was happening in 2009. In about June or July 2011, some further development happened and it got bumped up to a minimum API of 8, which I believe is Eclair. And then a bit through 2012, we had a few back-end fixes. But as you can see, the UI for it was reasonably simple. It didn't actually have a lot of finesse, shall we say. It had everything that you needed to know, and not really in a form that was generally accessible to users. Now, one of the reasons that I actually originally came on as a developer of I2P was because I wanted to make things easier. Yeah, I started out, whatever it was, 4 years ago now, looking at the router console and going, so yeah. So at some point during this, I found the I2P Android app code and decided I wanted to have a go at doing some stuff. So, end of 2013 to beginning of 2014, I did this big overhaul of the UI. Added in a navigation drawer because that was the fad at the time, and had to bump the minimum API for it, but essentially you can see it cleared up the main user interface for to actually make things a little bit easier. December 2014 was another big overhaul that doesn't particularly look big. From that, actually just looks like I changed the color of the Andrew bar. But that was actually a fairly big overhaul to move to material design, which was Google's new Android theme, in essence, and style guideline. Did some back-end improvements, and then finally, in June this year, I did another big overhaul and implemented the number one feature that KYTV in particular had been asking for, which was a UI to actually configure tunnels. So if I just flick back there, you can see it's come a fair way in terms of design and usability. I think I've got it reasonably happy, reasonably nice now. So yes, now essentially what we have is an app that runs an I2P router on your Android phone. So you just download the app, press and hold to start, and wait a bit, as usual when you're starting a new router. Distribution of this app, we have it available on the website for direct download. We also have it available in F-Droid, which is the open marketplace that people can install the Market app and then download apps through that. It is published in the main repository, but we also run our own repository, which you can add as a package repo to your phone. In fact, if anyone does have F-Droid and they open up that URL, there should be a QR code there that you can scan with your phone in order to add it into F-Droid. We've also, since the end of 2014, been on Google Play. This happened a fair bit later on mostly because of license issues. Issues to do with import and export of cryptography. Because what Google Play actually requires is, of course, for you to satisfy all the appropriate license distribution things, which is a little easier to ignore, I guess, for when we're doing our regular distribution thing, because our normal servers, particularly our normal download servers for the I2P software, are outside the US. So it generally makes things a fair bit easier. But with Google Play, because their main servers are inside the US, you have to have all the tick a box saying I accept all the appropriate license things, and because the account is technically has someone tied to it, you actually have to pay attention to those. So this is a lovely little graph showing the current user base on Google Play, and it's really nice because it shows that people are actually liking this. I mean, we don't have the uptake of Tor, for instance, or their Orbot app on Google Play, but it's actually looking pretty good, I think. We've got about 2,500 current installs. So this graph includes people who uninstall it. I think we've had over 5,000 total installs. So we're sitting at a retention rate of about 40 to 45% on Google Play, which is actually pretty darn good, I think. That lovely little spike after January 2015, well, for those of you who were here yesterday and remember ZZZ talking about how there's often a big surge of uptake after certain events, just for reference, those little markers are new releases. This particular surge in event was due to this article. I'm sure people from I2P will remember this one with fond memories, as being the article that Gizmodo wrote about the Silk Road Reloaded market moving to I2P. So, yes, this caused a little bit of a stir in interest and actually basically doubled our I2P Android usage. So, a nice side effect. In terms of usage, we find most of our use in the UK and the US. Germany being the next big one. US covers a lot of it, though. But what I really like about this is that there's a nice distribution across a lot of these. So although we're not necessarily getting a lot of usage in most of those countries, we are getting a lot of a wide distribution of usage, which I think is good for I guess, yeah, it widens the anonymity set in a sense. The one notable exception on this graph is Russia, which, as Izzy mentioned yesterday, is one of our main user bases for desktop I2P. But because of license crypto import regulations, you're supposed to have an import license and things, which we haven't got yet. So we can't legally provide the app to Russia through Google Play. So they can still get it elsewhere, but we just can't do it through here yet. Reasonably wide spread of Android versions for supporting, which always makes things fun. Sitting at about 1.36%, but using API, I think it's about API 10. So not, you know, we maintain back to API 9, which I think is Android Free. So the app is designed to work all the way back to phones from 2010, although good luck if you manage to get it to do so. We don't actively test on the older ones. So, on to the Agony. Suffice to say that Dalvik has been a little bit of an interesting beast throughout the usage of this app. Mostly due to its propensity for murder. This here is the activity lifestyle. That when you launch an activity, you know, it goes through its create, start, resume bits, and essentially there's like different levels of sort of aliveness. So when you're in this middle activity running section, the app is right there visible to the user. If, say, your Facebook window thing opens up over the top of it, your app will move down into on pause, which basically means that it's not the first thing there, but you can still see it. Once it's no longer visible, you'll move down to on stop, and then there's other ways to do things. This is where the app can die. Essentially, the moment it's outside of on pause, the app can be killed at any time for any reason. So it could never execute the on stop and on destroy code if Android needed to. And in fact, in pre-honeycomb mode, for pre-honeycomb devices, on pause was also accessible to the knife. Now, the activity side isn't... Okay, it is an issue, but it's not as much of an issue for us. The main issue, actually, is with the service, because that's what actually runs the router. I2P, of course, is not like the Orbot app, because the Orbot app, what they actually do is they bundle the Tor binary inside the app and run it as a separate process. So they have a bit of jiggery-pokery to do as well, but it's the model that they use is slightly different. In our case, because I2P is in Java, which made it a perfect thing to port over, the router services are all running in Java as well. So they're all based on this service, which is also killable. Interestingly, though, not during the create and destroy code. That is the one time where it's not allowed to be killed. But basically, whenever the service is running, it is able to be killed by the OS based on whether you're running out of memory or things getting too slow or that sort of stuff. Of course, I2P doesn't really make it very difficult for itself. It has rather high memory usage compared to other apps. And so for modern systems, you're often running a couple of things. You have a couple of different servers and things in the back. Yeah, it's you really want to be running this on a more modern phone. Most phones for the last year or two will be fine, but older ones, a lot more work has to go into keeping it alive. The other thing I haven't actually mentioned yet, but I'm just looking at timekeeping and other things, is state management is the other big one that's an issue, because essentially when, like I said, when one of these dies and it doesn't execute, well, it's the activity actually. When the activity doesn't execute its ending code, often you get a lot of leftover state. So like when you restart the app, it could try and start the service again, even if the service is already running and all that sort of thing. So there was a lot of work that actually had to go in that ZZZ had done, and then that I continued doing to actually get the thing to clean up after itself, and also handle having been killed. So there are many places in the code where it's like, do this now because I don't want to kill the phone. The next fun part with Android, battery life. As this is a real review of the Android app on Google Play, and as it rightly states, the way that I2P is designed as a distributed network means that it actually has to keep connected to a bunch of other routers. Like I'm actually running an I2P router on my phone at the moment, and it is currently talking with about 10 or 11 peers. So that's 10 or 11 different connections that have to be kept open. Now, the reason why this is a problem for battery life is because each of those connections, certainly if you're on your cellular data, it has to keep the mobile radio on, and the mobile radio is quite a battery-hungry beast. Most apps that want to use the network try and discretize the data that they send, so that you're only using the mobile, the cell network data for short bursts, periods of time, which is more efficient. I2P doesn't pay any attention to that because of course it's running the same router as you would run on a desktop. So it's operating on the assumption that the mobile network is essentially always there. What's next? When you're running it on Wi-Fi, it's certainly a bit better. Wi-Fi and plugged in, you'll be absolutely fine. But there would be a lot of changes that would need to happen in order to actually fix this as a problem. So I'm just going to leave that in the to-do basket, get bigger battery basket. I'd say final, it's really the third of the main ones. Issues that I find with Android development is error reporting. I'm sure anyone who's got an Android phone will remember when an app dies, you get a little window that pops up and goes, please, could you send a report for this? What that doesn't include, in our case, would be the I2P logs, which is what you see here. This is the screen for collecting I2P logs. Not the most user-friendly interface. Well, I mean, the interface is fine, but the logs themselves are not very accessible to the user. I've been struggling to think of ways to improve this beyond this copy all logs button. It's a little bit trickier than on desktop because the standard advice when there's a bug with I2P on desktop is go grab your log, copy the file, put it into a ticket. Can't really do that on Android because there's no file access to files, the internal files of apps because of security and yada yada. So you have to provide in-app mechanisms to be able to obtain those logs, which can make things a little unuser-friendly. What would be really nice is if we could just get rid of this and, have it so that people can look at it, but the log submissions mechanisms have the I2P logs bundled in, which would be beneficial then for fixing bugs. That said, most of the bugs on Android are actual Android-related bugs rather than I2P ones. Or if there's I2P general ones, we generally pick them up through desktop. But the other problem that you have with error reporting is actually persuading the users to click the report button. I do. Since we've been on Google Play, I've actually had a number of bugs being reported and crashes being reported that have been very beneficial for actually fixing things. That was one of the reasons I wanted to go through there, because I could actually get some feedback. Yeah, that's another side issue with that sort of with this sort of development, particularly pseudonymous development like I do, getting user feedback. But that's another kettle of fish. You see a couple of errors here that I haven't actually fixed yet because, yeah, who tries to fix a crash in libc? I really don't know what was going on there. The issue with the error collecting in this sort of instance, though, is firstly two things. One is actually the user clicking report, because often they just want to get back to what they were doing, so they click force close and you never get any data. The other one is privacy and making sure that what's actually being returned isn't going to compromise the end user. Now, because it's logs from a router, it's generally not as bad. Android's reasonably good for excluding identifying data, and I think the I2P logs are generally reasonably good as well, but it's conveying that to the user. What we can't do is just have use a third-party library, and when it crashes, have that data just immediately sent back to us. For two reasons. One, because we'd actually have to run another centralized service, yay, to collect that data. And two, because any sort of automated collection of data is really out of the question as far as our privacy model goes. We as much as we don't get as much data back, I would prefer user-initiated reporting. It just adds to the interest for this. So yeah, Android development can be a little interesting to actually get enough information, I guess, to easily develop across a bunch of different mobile situations and streams. So why do I do it? Why is this app being continued to be developed when I have a lot of other things that I could be doing with my time, like getting my head scratched? Well, firstly, as I said before, the main reason I went into working with this is the UI. And I think I've come up with a reasonably effective UI for the app as it stands. One of the things I really like about Android development, particularly now, is that with Google's material design, it makes it very easy for even novice designers like myself to come up with something that is easy to use and makes sense to the user. So, the Android app now is using design patterns that make sense for the sort of environment it's being used in. What I actually did here, if you look on the left with the tunnel screen, and in fact the main screen, rather than having the tunnels and the addresses buried behind links, which is what you remember we previously had, and in fact what the router console does. Essentially, I looked at this and went, what are the key activities that a user wants to do? They want to start and stop the router. They want to configure a tunnel to a new service, and they want to find a new service. So by refactoring the UI in this manner with these three buttons up the top here, essentially from the main screen, the user can get to any of those three sections very simply, and it's obvious to them which one they're in. There's also other things like swipe across factors and nice multi-layer shadowing things to make things easy. But the key part has really been the information architecture of the app, which has gone through a lot of revision during the design and development process. And yeah, if you compare it to this is the current I2P router console, I do think it's a step up. Just saying, no offense intended at the designers of the current I2P router console, but I do think it leaves a little lacking. So I'll stick with the Android one as as my preferred UI. The other thing and this is really the main thing that I like about the I2P Android app, is it provides excellent separation of concerns. Now, this is leveraging the I2CP API that Sai just talked about in the last talk. Essentially, that I2CP split works very well with Android's application architecture, which is it was all designed around essentially one application for one task. So you design something to do something, and that's all it does. So what we can essentially have on Android is have the I2P Android app as the sole running router on the computer, on the phone, and then build other apps that link to it via I2CP. In this case, what I'm showing is the Boat app, which was an application I did to port the I2P Boat network to Android. Basically creating a secure, distributed, encrypted email client for your phone. Now, the way that actually, as an app developer, for building it in, what you essentially do is bundle the I2P Android client library, which is a library that I extracted from the Android app, to basically bundle everything that you need. So this is basically how things look to the end user. End user opens up their app and then go, okay, I want to connect to the network. So I'm going to go across and click on connect to network. Now, in Boat's case, one of two things happens. If you don't have the I2P Android app installed, it just connects anyway because it bundles an I2P Android router inside it. And then if you clicked on the network thing, you'd say it's currently waiting to start. The other option is you click to connect to network, and if the user has I2P Android installed, it pops up and says, do you want to start it? Click yes, takes you across to the I2P Android app, which then starts, then immediately kicks you back into your base app, where you'll now see that I2P is in the background starting, and it's still waiting for it. So what this essentially does, it makes app development easy, because there's only two steps to use I2P on Android. Add the client library as a dependency, and then use the I2P Java APIs, which is identical to how you would develop on a regular app. Currently, Boat's the only app that I know of using it, so the API is it's cloistered, I guess, in that the person writing it is also the person using it. So it hasn't had so much feedback, but it does everything that I need for Boat, put it that way. I'm also planning on extracting the router, the built-in router part that's in Boat into a router library so that it can be used more generally. The reason I haven't done it yet is because I don't want it done wrong, I guess. The Nightweb app that was previously available for Android did bundle a router, but it didn't give any easy way to use a different router. So what you'd end up with is you could have multiple I2P routers running on the same device, which you really, really don't want. If you remember the shipping container, it would basically kill the phone. So, a couple of brief points in my negative 1.5 minutes left to talk about where do I want to go with this. Now, of course, there's a bunch of things on the to-do list, and if anyone wants to look at them, they're available in the code repository. But I can see three sort of key areas for future development for Android, for the Android app and Android in particular. The first one is remote router control. This is something I've been thinking about for years now, essentially treating the I2P Android app as a UI for your regular I2P router. So in the UI, what you would actually do is configure, like if you run a server like in a data center somewhere, or if you run one at home, you would configure I2P Android to know what that one is via a separate protocol called I2P control, designed by Hot Tuner, actually, the guy standing up at the lectern, I think. If he's still there, I can't see. And essentially what you would do is then you would control the remote routers from your app instead of by the router console. The other benefit this would have is essentially you could use apps on your phone that use I2P, but the actual I2P router is not running on your phone. So it lowers the load and the battery life and usage on your phone because you're only talking to your remote router. You're not actually running the I2P network on your phone. The other one, and ZZZ is going to kill me for this, suggesting it, is restricted routes. This is something that's been on the cards for a long time for I2P. Essentially, the idea being that you could restrict your pathway to certain nodes. Again, what this would do is restrict the load on the phone running the I2P app, and help to improve battery life, mainly by having fewer connections open. And the last thing is more apps. This is where you come in. I've tried to make the app development process as easy as possible. And so, yeah, we just need more things. It's simple enough to port existing Java apps open. So if someone really wanted to have I2P Snark on Android, they could do so. Just need someone to do the UI. And I don't have time. So someone else can do it. So, yes. Essentially, I2P development is easy on Android, well, as easy as it is on... Thanks.
All right, anybody got any questions? Questions for Strad?
From IRC, DG would like to hear about web browsing, how it works within the app.
Okay, I'm leaving a brief moment because I've got about 30 seconds or so before I'm supposed to go to my next talk. If anyone has any questions, I guess Hot Tuna can relay them to me because I can't actually hear anything. Okay, how does it work with the web browser? What I actually have, I'll just pull up the screenshots I use for what... wrong one. The way it works with a web browser essentially is that same on a regular browser, and then you set up proxy as 444, the same port as on the desktop. It doesn't matter. The app actually includes a browser connection guide on the browser that you have installed, and it will give you a guide on how to configure it. We're also currently working with the Orphox developers at Guardian Project. They are working on porting Tor browser to... okay. Can you hear me now? Some confirmation. So essentially what you can do is in the help menu in the I2P Android app, there's a browser configuration guide. And so you go into it and it's all the browsers you have installed. And if it knows what they are, then you can click on and it will show you how to configure. It will give you a quick guide on how to configure it for to use. We're also working Okay, I'm still here. Essentially, I've been getting in early to ensure that we can use I2P with it as well, and rather than having to maintain a separate fork of it. And those developers are very interested in that. So the idea there would essentially be you wouldn't even need any configuration. It would just work out of the box. Okay, any other questions?
I have a question. Is Boat ready?
Ready for what?
Well, he updated it yesterday.
Ready for you?
I installed it recently.
Excellent.
Any other questions? See some confirmation. What tuna? I need some help here.
Is he on IRC too? Is he on IRC too?
No, he's not on it now.
Well, I guess we won't be having our Hornet talk. You already hung up and called back, so I don't know what else we can do. Try one more time. If it doesn't work, we'll call it a day.
I can ask him when RC is done.
Yeah.
Back. I think we're back. I'm back. There we go. Yeah, so if no one had any other questions, can I just get confirmation on that? I'm not seeing any response. I'm just going to go on the assumption there are no other questions. So, second talk that I have here. I'm seeing you typing Hot Tuna, but I'm not getting anything from you.
You want to just call it, cancel the Hornet? I don't know what else we can do. Okay. We've called back a couple times. All right. Yes. So, I'll wait a few minutes and we'll stop. Okay, that's, I guess, going to be the end of the talks, and the formal end of the conference. We do have another section coming, which is going to be the I2P meeting part of it, where we're going to get organized. The first part we're going to do is a roadmap where we're talking about what we do next, and then after that, we're going to have an organizational meeting, which is who's doing it. Anybody's welcome to stay for that. If you're looking to contribute to I2P, if you have anything to offer, if you want to get involved, please stay for it. If not, if you just came for the talks and you want to keep an eye on us, you can install the software, keep in touch on IRC, follow me on Twitter at I2P. Very happy to have you this weekend. I think it was a huge success, and thank you very much for coming. And please stick around for next half hour or so, chat with us, ask us questions. We'll probably start the roadmap meeting in about half hour, about 5 o'clock. So thank you all for coming. Thanks to Jay. Thanks to